Good evening, everyone. We appreciate you taking your seats as we have a very exciting program for you tonight. We want to welcome you to the 2025 Mirror Awards. Thank you. We are celebrating exceptional writing, reporting, and editing of journalists who hold a mirror to their own industry for the public's benefit. That's what we're doing here tonight. To all of our nominees here, welcome and thank you for all you do to keep us informed. And a special welcome to the honorees of our featured awards tonight. To Jordan Bennett Begay and your colleagues from ICT, the recipients of the Lorraine Branham Award, and to Bob Costas, our recipient this year of the Fred Dressler Leadership Award. We're so looking forward to hearing more from Jordan and Bob later on this evening. And it would be remiss of me to not mention that Jordan and Bob are both, of course, alums of Syracuse University. They're part of the talented group of alumni we like to call the Newhouse Network. This is a special night, too, for the Newhouse School as we wrap up our year-long commemoration of our 60th anniversary. Our journalism roots at Syracuse run deep, tracing back to the vision and generosity of S.I. Newhouse and his family. We're grateful to be joined tonight by Syracuse University Chancellor Kent Syverud and Professor of Practice Dr. Ruth Chen. Chancellor Syverud and Dr. Chen were also there in August to welcome SI's son, Donald Newhouse, and his family back to campus to kick off our 60th celebration. It's fitting then that we close this milestone anniversary in New York City, the home of the first paper owned by the Newhouse family, the Staten Island Advance. For the Newhouse family, thank you for planting a seed that has led to the education of thousands of students who've gone on to fulfilling careers in communications. That legacy of education excellence is embodied in the generations of successful, gifted alumni who have gone on to create, report, photograph, film, write, and lead in their fields. Alumni like Jordan and Bob, presenter Ian Eagle, and our MC tonight, Mary Calvey. So please take a moment to enjoy this video celebrating 60 years of the Newhouse School.
I have the great honor of presenting the President of the United States.
I know that you share with me the great admiration and pride that the generosity of Dr. Newhouse has made possible for this great institution. And in the years and generations and centuries to come, we will see the products of this great adventure.
The world of media looked a lot different when Newhouse opened its doors 60 years ago. Most people read the news on paper. The internet didn't exist. Over the course of 6 decades, the industry changed and our building transformed. But our mission of training tomorrow's communicators endures. Year after year, graduates push boundaries and set new standards in the rapidly changing fields of media and communications. This year, the Newhouse School celebrates our 60th anniversary, a testament to the visionary commitment seeded by S.I. Newhouse in 1964. Together, we recognize 60 years of creative talents, world-embracing interest, and unparalleled opportunity. On this great occasion, we celebrate a proud legacy, a tradition of thinking big, embracing change, and a bright future.
Thank you. And for the Newhouse graduates in the room today, yes, that is legendary Professor Rick Wright providing the narration, a familiar voice. Major market indeed. Now, the programs we offer have evolved over the years, of course. Part of what has made the Newhouse School so successful for so long is our ability to adapt as technology influences the way we communicate. But our founding mission, established in 1964 to provide the best journalism education in the country, endures. Our commitment to freedom of speech and freedom of the press remains steadfast. It is inscribed It is, of course, inscribed on the Newhouse 3 building for all to see, and we have stood by these commitments for 60 years, and we stand by them today. And recognizing the work of our award winners is as critical as ever. We're all aware of the challenges facing our industry. Journalism seemingly is a field marked by constant churn in one way or another. And what we're taking a moment to do tonight is to celebrate what we do best, telling compelling stories, taking the time to conduct comprehensive reporting, helping the public understand complicated topics and how the media itself works. Mirror Award entries are written by the media about the media. We do this in the face of swirling winds coming from all directions. We often do this without fuss, filing our stories and moving on to our next project. So to all the writers, reporters, editors, anchors, photographers, videographers here tonight, as well as everyone else who works behind the scenes to provide news to the public, thank you sincerely for all of your work. I also want to take a moment to recognize our judges for volunteering to read through dozens of entries to narrow another competitive field. As someone who once worked in broadcast news and served on many such panels myself, I know the effort it takes to judge a journalism competition, so thank you for all of your time. And I would also like to highlight two members of the Newhouse team who have played important roles with the Mirror Awards and the Newhouse School's other featured awards competition, the Toner Prizes. Alumna Rachel Chang stepped in this year as our awards consultant, filling an important role for our events team and helping to keep our award programs on schedule. And Professor Joel Kaplan is no stranger to these awards. He's been an important voice in helping to manage the Mirror Awards year after year. So Rachel and Joel, thank you so much for all of your work. And I also want to thank Mary Calvi from Inside Edition Weekend and WCBS TV here in New York for serving as our MC tonight. Mary will take the podium when the main portion of our program begins in about a half hour. But in the meantime, please enjoy dinner, and we'll see you shortly. Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for that wonderful round of applause. One more time. And a round of applause to everyone who just graduated from Newhouse. Please, will you please stand up? I was waiting for my son to stand up. He's right here. Christopher just graduated from Newhouse, and everyone else who just graduated. I had such a great experience at Newhouse, and I know all of you did. It was just a life changer for me, so I'm just so proud to be here. Thank you for having me. It really means so much. And thank you for joining us at the 2025 Mirror Awards. Tonight, we honor the work of journalists and the critical importance of that work to our democracy and society. The Mirror Awards were established in 2006 to recognize the reporters, the editors, and the writers who hold a mirror to their own industry for the public's benefit. The competition is open to anyone who conducts reporting, commentary, or criticism of the media industries and work produced for print, for broadcast, online distribution over the previous year. And now, before we move on, I want to recognize some distinguished guests here tonight, and I want to hear that applause, all right? Everybody ready? Please, a big round of applause for the Chancellor, Ken Severud. And Professor of Practice, Dr. Ruth Chen. Also joining us is Interim Provost and Vice Chancellor Lois Agnew. We also welcome members of the Syracuse University Board of Trustees, Newhouse Advisory Board, and the Newhouse Emerging Leaders. Thank you for all of your support of the Mirror Awards and the mission of the Newhouse School. It means so much. A thank you to all our sponsors and a special thank you to our lead sponsors, Charter Communications, the Samuel L. Newhouse Foundation, and Advanced Media. Net proceeds from the Mirror Awards fund Newhouse scholarships, and you know how important those are. And also, those provide students access to such a quality education. So we are so grateful for our sponsors' support of the Mirror Awards tonight. And it is the culmination of a comprehensive judging process. This is really quite remarkable. Over the past 2 months, a double tier of 49 judges paired over 126 entries down to 14 finalists in 4 categories. And these entries provide a snapshot of the major media moments of the past year, reminding us of what was important, what has changed, and what is at stake. To all our finalists, your work is vital. I know firsthand how much time and energy it takes to craft compelling stories and commentary about complicated topics that will connect with the reader or the viewer. And coverage of the media itself can build trust with our audience, which is such a crucial component of what we do. Thank you to all of our finalists for your dedication to quality journalism. And now, how about we do this? Let's start recognizing this year's winners. We realize how important it is to keep the program moving, so please continue to enjoy your dinner while we begin the awards. First up, we have the Mirror Award for Best Single Article or Story. The finalists are Brian Stelter, The Real Story of the Crisis at the Washington Post for The Atlantic; Kyle Pauletta, A New Normal for the Columbia Journalism Review; Katie Thornton, Jesus Take the Wheel for Rolling Stone; John Danishevsky, Laura Colarusso, Megan Cattell, and Fatma Khaled, Unparalleled and Unprecedented for Neiman Reports. And the Mirror Award goes to Katie Thornton, Jesus Take the Wheel for Rolling Stone. The judges said Katie Thornton is a wonderful storyteller. She provides great color, context, and history about why and how the Educational Media Foundation became the country's fastest growing radio chain over the last 40 plus years.
Thank you all so much for having me and for this recognition. This is very unexpected. It was truly an honor just to be considered and among all of this incredible list of finalists. The story that I did for Rolling Stone is about the Educational Media Foundation. They are the little-known billion-dollar nonprofit that is behind the rise of Christian rock and pop on the FM radio dial. They are the fastest growing radio chain in the country. They are the second largest station owner after iHeartMedia. And there hadn't really been like a major investigation into this organization outside of industry reporting. I pitched a story on them. I mean, they're a nonprofit organization, so they're able to sort of have access to the lower frequencies of the FM band. There's a lot of sort of FCC loopholes that are available to small nonprofits that they've been able to exploit in their very, very rapid growth. And I pitched this story about the media industry to Rolling Stone, a group I had never worked with before, cold pitched my editor, Christian Horde. And much to my surprise, he was very open to the story and gave me so much leeway, and ultimately we ended up running a 6,000-word story on this organization. I cannot thank Rolling Stone and Christian enough for trusting me with this story, for the excellent guidance and the editorial input along the way, and for trusting readers as well, that this is going to be a story that's of interest. And I received so much wonderful feedback from people who read the story, from people who spoke with me for the story, and I really, really appreciate your trust in me and in your readers and your editorial input along the way. Something that gives me so much hope is hearing from readers when a story has meant something to them, and also hearing from the people who I reach out to for interviews. it gives me so much hope that there is still trust and an interest in sharing stories with the media if we tell them well. So thank you all for what you do, and thanks for this honor. This is wild. Thank you.
Our next award is for Best Profile, recognizing a carefully researched and sourced piece about an individual or organization noteworthy in the media industry. And the finalists are Jack Herrera, La Periodista de Iowa for Columbia Journalism Review. Amaris Castillo, in New Orleans, a pioneering nonprofit newsroom ponders a future beyond its founder for Pointer.org. Aidan McLaughlin, inside the unlikely success of Patrick Bet-David for the Spectator World. And the Mirror Award goes to La Periodista de Iowa by Jack Herrera for Columbia Journalism Review. Jack is not able to be here tonight. To accept on his behalf is his colleague Betsy Morris from the Columbia Journalism Review. Judges noted what an unexpected, engaging story, great reporting, and powerful scenes do a notable job of showing this woman's impact on her community and telegraph the critical role good journalism can play in readers' lives. The author does an excellent job creating a sense of place.
Hi, this is super heavy. Just in case you guys win later. Okay, so my name is Betsy Morris. I'm the acting editor of the Columbia Journalism Review. And I worked with Jack on this story, and I first want to thank him for his brilliant work as a writer and a colleague and a seer of stories. It was Jack who first told me about Lorena Lopez, the editor of La Prensa de Iowa, which is a profitable print Spanish-language newspaper serving rural farm towns in the western part of the state. What struck me about Lopez right away was that she just quite simply does great journalism. She knows what people want to know and how to give them answers. It's not complicated or high-tech. For all that has been made about the swell of misinformation in Spanish-speaking communities, the truth is that, just as in any community, what's needed is good information. This award is for Jack, who told her story so deftly, and for Lopez, who provides exactly the kind of local news that every community in this country needs. Thank you so much.
Moving on now to Best Commentary category. We honor those writers who demonstrate analytic skills, a unique voice, and deep knowledge of the issues. And the finalists are John Alsop for Columbia Journalism Review. The pieces include the cynicism of blaming the media for the Trump assassination attempt. Is the press sandwashing Trump? NATO bombed a Chinese embassy. 25 years on, the battle for the narrative continues. Jake Caspian Kang for The New Yorker. The pieces include How biased is the media really? Arguing ourselves to death. It's time to show Trump's speeches again. Claire Malone for The New Yorker. The pieces include The Memification of American Politics. Is the media prepared for an extinction-level event? Is Hunter Brook Media a news outlet or a hedge fund? Jessica Benet for The New York Times. Pieces include The Audacity of E. Jean Carroll, Accordion Hands and Caterpillar Eyebrows, Trump Meets the Female Gaze. Trump is weird, Vance is creepy, finally the Democrats start name-calling. And the Mirror Award goes to Claire Malone for The New Yorker. The judges stated the topics that Malone writes about are really important. The writing is strong, the writing is graceful. Malone pulls together all the depressing but essential facts about the state of the industry in the extinction-level piece. She made excellent and possibly even hopeful points about up-and-coming reporters in particular.
a little heavy. Thank you for this. I'm really honored to have been nominated, and John, Jay, and Jessica are also talented, so it really means a lot. I owe a big thanks to my editor, Rob Fisher, for his generous conversations with me as I thought through all these pieces, and for his careful eye and edits. To all the editors in the room, thank you. Really helps. I'd also like to acknowledge my husband, Getsy, for his encouragement and for putting up with the highs and lows that writing brings. Thank you for constantly patching the holes in that leaky ship called confidence. Covering the media at this time in the history of the country and the business can often be pretty bleak work. But I think journalism, including journalism about journalism, is also patriotic work. I hope we can continue to reach more people with fact-based reporting and analysis. And two, in the words of St. Francis, who I'm sure would have been a dutiful New Yorker subscriber, seek not so much to be understood as to understand. Thank you again.
And now for our final jury category, the John M. Higgins Award for Best In-Depth Enterprise Reporting. As a cable industry beat reporter and then as editor of Broadcasting and Cable, John Higgins exemplified fairness and excellence in media reporting. With this award, we honor a reporter or team of writers who tackled big issues with keen analysis and excellent reporting. The finalists for the 2025 Higgins Award are Jason Book for Texas Observer, PBS, Palabra. The pieces include La Gorda Loca Goes to Court, La Gorda Loca Lost, So Did Journalism, and Freedom to Inform. Manuel Roig Franzia and Hope Hodgesek for The Washington Post. The pieces include A Taliban Revenge Killing Prompts Questions Removal of an Acclaimed Documentary. Murrow Award rescinded for acclaimed retrograde documentary. Ann Cooper, Gabe Ballard, and Laura Colarusso for Neiman Reports. The pieces include Unerased, Saving the First Draft of History, We Had No Place to Save the Stories. And the Mirror Award goes to Manuel Roig Franzia and Hope Hodgesek for The Washington Post. Judges noted that they liked the story because it resulted in direct action. The story was pulled in order to protect locals who helped the U.S. military in Afghanistan. It also delves into the important issue of the responsibility of journalists to protect sources. The story demonstrates the impact that great journalism can have.
First and foremost, I'd like to dedicate this award to the man who, in our story, we called Justin Bieber, because that's what the Green Berets, who he protected so well, called him. He has since been identified by his family as Omar, and his loved ones survived him. He protected Americans when it was very risky to his own safety to do so. And he was targeted and killed by the Taliban due to some arguably choices that were made that were not in his best interest. The story deserved to be told, and as a freelance journalist, I am more grateful than I can possibly say to the Washington Post and my far greater and more prestigious co-author, Manuel Roig Franzia, who cannot be here today, and our outstanding editor, Hank Stuver, who shepherded the story through months of painstaking reporting and trying to make the right choices and seeking to tell the story in a way that was deserving of this young man whose story risked being forgotten. I also want to thank Thomas Kaza of the 1208 Foundation, one of the Green Berets who, after service, made it his mission that the men and women who he fought with would not be forgotten, that the Afghans who supported Americans in Afghanistan, that their stories would be told, and that there would still be somebody to fight for them stateside to help them be resettled. I had a conversation recently with somebody who's still in the fight, a veteran who is still working on Afghan resettlement, and he told me that the window is closing. And what he meant by that was that the window of American attention is closing, that Afghanistan is moving off of the American attention radar as more pressing things take its place. But there are still people who are left behind who need our help. So I would like to dedicate this award to Omar and to them. Thank you.
A big congratulations to all of the Mirror Award winners. Just a round of applause for all of their hard work. It's remarkable. And now it is time to present the Lorraine Branham Award, which honors a media organization's exemplary work in promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. In particular, this award recognizes efforts to hire and develop leadership talent who create change, both to the organization they oversee and the content they produce. The award is named for the late Dean Emerita Lorraine Branham, who was the first Black woman to serve as Dean of the Newhouse School. And the recipient of this year's Lorraine Branham Award is ICT. Previously known as Indian Country Today, ICT is the premier news source for stories written and produced by Indigenous journalists, a multimedia platform that covers the Indigenous world. Their impactful work has won honors including Best Digital Publication and Best Newscast, and has been recognized for general excellence from organizations including the Indigenous Journalists Association and the Women's Media Center. We are proud to recognize their work here tonight. And here to offer remarks and present the award to ICT Managing Editor Jordan Benet Begay is Mark Trahant. He is the former ICT editor-at-large and currently serves as the board chair of Indige Public Media, the parent company of ICT. Mark will join us on stage in a few minutes to introduce Jordan, but first, for those who are not familiar with ICT's incredible work, here is a glimpse at what the organization does.
Native people have been using the latest technology for 10,000 years, and we're still in that frame of taking advantage of technology and turning it into stories.
Everywhere that you look in every part of this country, there are Indigenous people who have inhabited the land, who have taken care of the water since time immemorial. We're only better as citizens if we learn about the first peoples of this land, the ones who have cultivated the exact buildings and, roads and trains and planes that we fly on. It is a real duty of everyone to learn about the Indigenous people of the places that they live.
More than 40 years ago, Tim Gallego, who was a Lakota journalist, had this vision for Lakota Times. And he wanted a newspaper that would serve Pine Ridge, South Dakota, the Ogallala community, and was hyper-focused on that. Then he decided he wanted to expand and serve all of Indian country, and that became Indian Country Today. It was a time when there were a lot of national aspirations, and Tim was a big thinking kind of guy.
I remember growing up reading ICT as an actual physical newspaper. And ICT has grown from a magazine, from the newspaper, newsletter, to what it is today with a digital news component and a broadcast component. And it's continuously growing and transforming.
So when I first started at ICT, I was one of the first 5 or 6 employees, and I recall Mark Trahant and Jordan Bennett McGay and I, sitting back to back, just pop, 3 little computers in a basement to go from, 5 employees to 40, 50 plus. To see our continued growth is just makes me really hopeful for what we're building.
There was a story that the Associated Press wrote that had a great headline. Indian Country Today has a new owner itself, and Indige Public Media is that owner. In 2018, when I took over, I did not want to change the name. I thought Indian Country Today was an amazing legacy and wanted to build on that. Then George Floyd happened, and people started to rethink all the institutions. And a name of such colonial implications was one that could not survive. We had a committee. We started to think through what possibilities are. One of the things that we found was, what if we didn't define it and just made it ICT? Younger readers could see it as Indigenous and redefine it their way, and older readers could still think of it as Indian Country Today.
I think it's important to have Indigenous voices telling Indigenous stories, and working with a majority Indigenous staff, you don't have to explain why a story is important. You don't have to fight to have your voice heard. We all come from different tribal communities across the country, and there's a respect and understanding that most newsrooms might not have.
Without an organization like ICT that can uncover and represent tribal communities and Indigenous perspectives through our mediums and our platform and to our audience, critical content is not getting out there, and a tribal perspective is not being well represented.
ICT has shaped the way I see journalism, that showed me that diversity and inclusion is possible within the journalism industry. I think up until recently, newsrooms were predominantly white male. A lot of things that aren't traditionally newsworthy are newsworthy to people, being from different walks of life.
The reason why it's important for ICT to be on as many platforms as possible is because not everybody thinks like a news person, and that's fine. Some people are on social media, and that's how they get their news. Some people sign up for newsletters and get an email box each day, and that's how they get their news.
A division of Indig Public Media is a nonprofit organization. We exist by way of philanthropic relationships, individual donors writing a check, private foundations making a grant, special events and sponsorships garnering funds that ultimately fund our operations at 100%. So engagement from the community philanthropically is critical.
It's important that they talk about ICT and that word of mouth spreads, that we are very vital and we take our role seriously in representing correctly and accurately and genuinely Native history and culture, languages, education, etc.
ICT has always had a double mission. One mission is to serve the audience and just have information about tribal communities in a way that's important and useful. The second one that's equally as important is to build a platform for young people, for journalists. I mean, I want people to look at ICT on a tablet or on a website and say, that's where I want my kid to work when they grow up.
I am happy to introduce Jordan Bennett-Begay, ICT's managing editor. She is, of course, a proud alumna of Syracuse University, holding her master's degree from the Newhouse School of Public Communications. But there's so much more to the story. And when we break ICT into 4 eras, the paper was first owned by Tim Gallego, then it was owned by the Oneida Indian Nation in New York, and most recently the incarnations known as the not-for-profit venture that became Indig Public Media. Of that, Jordan Bennett-Begay was the first editorial employee of ICT after it had gone dark and had been brought back to life. That was in July of 2018. She was a reporter in our DC bureau, then the bureau chief, and then our top editor. One of the treasures that Jordan carries is her love for Indigenous communities, especially the Dene. As she describes her mission, ICT is a spacious channel dedicated to covering Indigenous journalists by Indigenous journalists. We add context to stories. One of her remarkable successes was when the COVID epidemic hit. Jordan's background in public health was a key piece of context that she added to our reporting. She then built a data module to track deaths across Indian country, something that had never been done before, even by the Indian Health Service and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. wonderful that that public service is now hosted by Johns Hopkins University Center for Indigenous Health. And this is what journalism is all about, creating new knowledge, serving readers and community. Often I hear editors say we need more young voices in journalism and as leaders. Too often that means expecting that those leaders will see the world and the role in journalism the same way we do. That's a mistake. We need young people to set high standards, innovate, and build a medium for the next generation of readers. And Jordan does that. She serves readers. She reports for and about Indigenous communities and fulfills the critical mission of journalism. Please join me and welcome Jordan Bennett Begay to the podium and for the award.
She Jordan Bennett Begay and she Kia Ani Ashle Madish Gijin Dashachi Anakaidina Dashache Oze Tachini Dashanella Aquatego Dina Asan Nishle. Sorry, I lost my place. So I'm of the Towering House people, born for the Coyote Pass people with Hamas. My Che, or my maternal grandfather, is of the Mexican people clan. And my Nully, or my paternal grandfather, is of the Red Running to Water with Hopi clan. And in this way, I am a Navajo woman. So I have to do that, or else my mom's gonna get mad at me. But it's just a traditional custom we have to do. I just want to thank Newhouse again for this award on behalf of ICT. And I also like to recognize that we are all guests of Lenape-Ahokan, the homelands of the Lenape people who are still here today, as the thousands of Indigenous people who continue to help steward these lands. And I also wanted to thank the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, where Syracuse and Newhouse are located. My Haudenosaunee relatives welcomed me with open arms about 10 years ago, which allowed me to fully thrive at Newhouse. And I don't think I would be here accepting this award on behalf of ICT without them. So thank you. If there's anybody in here from there. Okay. So I've been thinking about the word democracy a lot in the last 6 months and more in the last week, and how it is crucial to Indigenous, American, and global narratives across the world, right? A democracy can exist without the press, and a democracy can exist without Indigenous voices. And we specifically, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, inspire the formation of American democracy. When we celebrate diversity, inclusion, and equity, as this award symbolizes, we're also spotlighting tribal sovereignty and the unique nation-to-nation relationship the United States has with tribal nations. It is etched into many of the founding documents of this country, which next year is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And this land, Indigenous people, democracy, and the press are all very intertwined in our collective histories. And I think this is what makes ICT so special. We write our own history books with those intertwined narratives. We remind America that the relationship it has with the 574 federally recognized tribes. And we also try our very best to be the voice for more than 564 tribal nations that do not have free protections. Our reporting covers the nuance and personal stories and brings historical, political, and social context to the front. ICT also brings the stories from Capitol Hill, the United Nations, and our regional bureaus to our aunties, cousins, and grandchildren. And when our reporters are in front of the camera reporting on election night, they're actually talking to their grandparents on the other side of that TV screen. And of course, when we think about how to serve the next generation, we have young people become part of the storytelling process. And I'm so grateful to be part of a newsroom that constantly thinks how it can develop young talents so they can have the baton passed to them, just like Mark indicated earlier. But perhaps one of my favorite parts about our newsroom is centering Indigenous excellence and brilliance for the world and making that information free so my nieces and nephews know that we can exist in spaces beyond the drum circle, language classes, and gardens, but that we're teachers, lawyers, policy analysts, journalists, actors, surgeons, CEOs, astronauts, and just so much more than what dominant society says we are. And we'll continue to publicly serve them and Indigenous people across the country and in this world and in this way. And lastly, I feel like I'm oddly closing a beautiful circle with Lorraine Branham tonight. I remember her face on the school website when I applied. She was my dean. I also remember her talking to us on orientation day and walking in the halls laughing and just saying hello to us. And a few years after I graduated, I returned to Syracuse to speak at Newhouse's Race and Media Symposium. And it was minutes or before after that event is when we were told that she passed away. And I think all of those moments combined, plus knowing the type of person she was and what she advocated for, just really makes this award more meaningful. So thank you. Yeah.
How wonderful. Congratulations. Congratulations again to ICT, and thank you to Jordan Benet Begay and your colleagues for the vital work that you do. We're closing our program tonight with the presentation of the Fred Dressler Leadership Award. This award is named for late Time Warner Cable executive and Newhouse alumnus Fred Dressler. It's given by the Newhouse School to recognize an individual who has made distinct, consistent, and unique contributions to the public's understanding of the media. Past honorees include luminaries such as PBS senior correspondent Judy Woodruff, acclaimed documentary filmmaker and executive Sheila Nevins, and Dean Baquet of the New York Times. This year's recipient of the Fred Dressler Leadership Award is one of the most recognizable and honored figures in sports journalism. Over his iconic career, Bob Costas has won 29 Emmy Awards, which is more than any other sports broadcaster. Bob has been recognized for excellence in hosting, in play-by-play, writing, journalism, interviewing, news, and entertainment. Bob has been the authoritative voice of record for the world's biggest sporting events. He's hosted 12 Olympic Games, 7 Super Bowls. He's been on the call or hosted 10 NBA Finals and 7 World Series. And of course, if you're a fan of baseball, you know that Bob is one of the best in the business in the booth. He's a member of the broadcasting wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame, as well as the National Sportscasters and Sports Writers Hall of Fame. Here to share more about Bob and to present the award is my fellow Newhouse School alumnus and a good friend, Ian Eagle.
Thank you, Mary, very much. Very proud of my classmate, and congratulations on all of your success. I am extremely honored to be here tonight. When the committee reached out to let me know about this event, they informed me that I was one of 3 finalists to present Bob the Fred Dressler Leadership Award. So I obviously needed to know who else was in consideration for this. Apparently, I don't know if this is new, they wanted someone anatomically comparable to Bob. Again, I don't know if this is the first year. So I came to learn that it was down to me, actor Rick Moranis, and superstar musician Paul Simon. Kevin Hart was also mentioned, but he couldn't make it. I know, it's a very interesting list. Rick has a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids convention tonight in Altoona, Pennsylvania. You can make a pretty good buck at those events. Paul said no. I don't believe there's any beef there, but they just got the sound of silence from him. So you can see why I'm so excited that I got the nod. I don't want to bury the lead here. That's Journalism 101, and that's why these awards exist. Bob Costas is a once-in-a-generation broadcaster. That is not hyperbole. That is a fact. It's true. Facts. To use a baseball term, one of Bob's great passions, he is a five-tool player. We're talking Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Mike Trout, all rolled into one. That is what Bob possesses in his broadcast tool bag. TV studio host, play-by-play, interviewer, essayist, syndicated radio host. Shout out to Costas Coast to Coast, big staple in the 80s and 90s. I was a huge fan. He hasn't just performed these roles, he's mastered them. He's the gold standard in this highly competitive business. Syracuse, of course, was an indispensable part of Bob's journey, sharpening his skills in all facets of the job. He got a big break right out of college, working at the mighty KMOX radio in St. Louis, doing play-by-play for the ABA St. Louis Spirits, among other assignments. In those years, was Bob just doing a Marv Albert imitation? Yes. Did all of us that grew up in the New York area that dreamed of one day doing play-by-play basically do a version of Marv? Yes. Bob eventually developed his own style. His career began to skyrocket. High-profile assignments, opportunities were now presenting themselves at various networks. I remember seeing and hearing Bob for the first time on NBC's baseball coverage. Early 1980s, he and former Yankees shortstop all-star Tony Kubek were a delight. They had incredible chemistry. They complemented one another perfectly. And Bob understood how to mix the traditional play-by-play with a more modern sensibility. And what I really appreciated, he brought levity to the broadcasts. He recognized there was a time and a place for everything, but he always seemed to know the right time and the right place. Soon after, Bob was also named the studio host for the NFL on NBC. I marveled at how he deftly juggled the scores and the highlights, segment after segment, and how he set up the analysts at the desk. I now think back on that viewing experience on a personal level, and I realized that Bob was putting on a clinic of how to do the job. And he created a template for all the men and women who do that job today. In addition to his growing sports duties, Bob added another gig at NBC. The resume had entertainment, late night host. Later, with Bob Costas, showcased Bob's phenomenal abilities as an interviewer and his command on a variety of subjects. It was an eclectic group. The guests ranged from Little Richard to Richard Lewis to Johnny Cash to Joe Namath to Gerald Ford to Mary Lou Henner to Dr. Ruth. It's quite a list I put together. a cocktail party that we'd all want to be a part of. And somehow Bob again proved that he was an exceptional conversationalist who could extract interesting information no matter who sat opposite him. This is when I was fortunate enough to meet Bob for the first time. I was a senior at Syracuse, fall of 1989, and Newhouse had a new class, brand new, sportscasting, genius. The late, great Joel Moranis, an early mentor of Bob's and the former voice of the Orange, was the professor, and he invited Bob to speak to the students. Joel had given me the highest compliment possible earlier that semester. He told me that I reminded him of Bob. And I said, why? Because we wear the same blazer size? What's the connection? And he said, that's exactly what Bob would say. So, and we do. We're wearing the same suit tonight. It's freaky. Bob arrived, and he dazzled all of us with stories and anecdotes about his experiences, and I quickly realized that I had never been in the presence of someone more eloquent and well-spoken in my life. He spoke with us for about an hour and 20 minutes. I introduced myself afterwards. At the end of the session, Bob was warm, he was affable, he was charming. I wanted to date Bob. I mean, really, that's what it came down to, but the May-December romance was not gonna work. And I had a girlfriend who I eventually married, so that wasn't in the cards. But he inspired me that day to raise my level, to improve my vocabulary, to get rid of any filler words in my daily speech, like, you know, I mean. Bob didn't use them. Why should I? It was a eureka moment, and I would share that with any current Newhouse student or Newhouse grad. Dump it, get rid of it, make a conscious effort, clean it up, put an end to it. I'm not going to go through all of Bob's entire career here because to detail all of his accomplishments, we'll be sleeping in this ballroom and then having breakfast together. So we don't have time. Just know this. Any broadcast that includes Bob Costas means the audience is getting honesty, it's getting integrity, it's getting thoughtfulness, uber professionalism, not Uber, the driving service. I'm using it as a describing word. And a personal touch that only Bob can deliver. No matter the topic, Robert Quinlan Costas, I'm going with your government name, Bob, for effect, is prepared and ready to back it up. Bob is a broadcaster that everybody in the business admires, and he is the measuring stick that we are all trying to live up to. Bob, I'm lucky enough to call you a colleague. I'm luckier to consider you a friend. And even your texts are articulate. I'd like to see you work in more emojis. Work on that for 2025. Congratulations on the honor. You are the epitome of what sports journalism is supposed to be. Before he comes up to accept this prestigious award, please enjoy this video tribute to Bob Costas.
HBO, MLB, Ken Burns. I mean, it didn't matter where Bob Costas went, I would follow and I would watch.
Buonasera from Torino, everybody. I'm Bob Costas. Hello and Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Bob Costas.
You know, he is a man of his convictions. No matter what side of the interview he is on, and I think that's part of what makes him great.
He's a storyteller. He looks off the field, and he is a journalist that uses his pulpit as a journalist to tell the stories that are important to him and should be important to the viewer.
He's been willing to take on any issue and had the courage
the grace, the talent to pull it off. That's Bob Costas.
Bob, you are our gold standard. You're the one we all wanted to be like. You inspired so many of us and befriended us as well.
In my opinion, hands down, Bob is the best studio host in the history of sports television.
These days, I've had occasion to look back on a number of things, and when I see something that I was involved with that was done well, along with whatever my actual personal sensibility was, so it said something that was true about me, that gratified me. From my perspective, one of the challenges always has been to cover sports journalistically. But more and more, it seems that the networks are reluctant to cover the leagues that they present. I've never thought that there was a contradiction between appreciating the drama, the excitement, the theater, the shared experience, the history of sports, and I think I did a pretty good job of presenting that, but at the same time, acknowledging the elephants in the room and the issues involved.
But knowing what we know now about the risk of catastrophic injury and perhaps the long-term effects, we're not going to allow our son to play football. What would you say?
Have you ever used steroids? No.
Is China's rise irreconcilable with America's interests?
You want to let me finish here for a second, pal?
I'm asking you the question.
Then shut your mouth and let me answer the question, all right? I'll be happy to answer.
Go ahead and answer it.
Good.
I was always interested in sports, and I could never separate the voices that brought the games to me from the games themselves. And I figured out fairly early that if I was ever going to get into Yankee Stadium without paying for a ticket, it would probably be to be in the broadcast booth where Mel Allen and Red Barber were sitting, rather than in center field where Mickey Mantle was standing.
Listen to the roar as he leaves the Yankee Stadium mound.
I always wanted to be a sports broadcaster from the time I was 9 or 10 years old.
Hi, everybody. Bob Costas along with Marv Albert. First item of business.
Bob and I started our careers at NBC Sports about the same time. We all saw that he was very special in his preparation, his knowledge, and his presence.
I think he's one of the very few people in our business who can do everything. And that's a very rare combination. Usually people are great at one or the other, or not very good at any of them, but Bob is great at all of them.
Bob Costas is an incredible role model for our students as they're learning to be sports journalists. He is still affecting what kind of stories we're talking about, what our students are looking for, and what it means to be a sports journalist.
I actually feel that some of Bob's finest work took place when we teamed up, along with Dave, on David Letterman's late night show at NBC to handle the play-by-play on Dave's enthralling elevator races competition.
Let's take you back upstairs to Studio 6A and David Letterman. David.
All right, thank you very much, Bob Costas, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, a career high for both of us.
If I were to sum up Bob's legacy here at Newhouse, it would be to ask the extra question, to look off the field, and to have the courage to tell the stories that others aren't, give a voice to those that don't have one, and to make sure that we are doing our jobs as educators, but also as journalists within the sports media world.
To me, when you look at his career, the high level at which he's done everything he's ever done, and it's a wide variety of things, hosting, interviewing, play-by-play, there's nobody who's ever been better at all of it than Bob, and I think he set a standard that will be impossible to surpass.
I think you're the only person ever to be awarded Emmys for covering sports and news and entertainment. You're the GOAT of broadcasting.
My approach has always been, if not in every individual broadcast, then over time, I hope that my presentations were like a great edition of the old Sports Illustrated, when Sports Illustrated was at its peak. Some journalism, some history, some humor, that it hit several notes, and that taken together, there was texture to it.
Bob, I've told you this before, you're the best. I so admire not just your talent, but honestly, Bob, your integrity.
I don't think there's ever been anyone better to narrate Olympic stories, to bring those stories to American households and living rooms, and working with you now, as we have the last few years, as CNN commentators. That's just a delight and a joy. He is the gold standard. He is the best.
The basic advice I give hasn't changed. Try and get as well-rounded an education as you can. The better read you are, the greater your appreciation of language is, the broader your frame of reference about the world, not just sports, is. Value the importance of words. And my other bit of advice would be, looking at the landscape here, a thoughtful take is better than a hot take, and personality and quality are not measured in decibel levels.
Please welcome 2025 Fred Dressler Leadership Award recipient, Bob Costas.
You know, when the introduction, and thank you, Ian, is better than the acceptance, I don't know where to go from here. I am 73 years old, in reasonably good health, but Ian, you're a generation behind me. Can I sign you now to do my eulogy? I can die in peace if I know that you're there to sum it up for me, as you did, better than I deserve at this point. At least Ian did not lean on any cliches, actually, and did not say, here is a person who needs no introduction, which I've heard so many times, and yet it isn't always true. I'm sure that Ian and Marv could attest to this. I'll be walking down the street, somebody says, good to see you, Mr. Nance. Love your work, Mr. Musburger. I was actually once, Marv doesn't know this, getting off a plane. The pilot's standing in the cockpit door. He says, thanks for flying with us, Marv. I said, yes, an enjoyable flight. Why, just keep things moving, One of the best, however, this is true, I have witnesses. 10 years ago, maybe. I'm waiting to cross the street here in Manhattan, waiting for the light to change. And here comes a young guy making his way toward me, and after a while you get to understand when someone's making a beeline for you. Big smile on his face, sticks out his hand, and he goes, Bryant, I love you. I'm slightly taken aback, but I said, this is getting so old. I'm Greg Gumbel, not Bryant Gumbel. I know my brother is more famous than I am, but can't I get a little respect? And without missing a beat, the guy says, oh, Greg, I love you too. I will get to the substance of this momentarily, but that connects to this. Last one, I promise. 2016, Muhammad Ali's memorial service in Louisville. And is that for Louisville, for Muhammad Ali? For both? For both, okay. Oh, there you go. Okay, so Bill Clinton's one of the eulogists, Bryant Gumbel's one of the eulogists. Billy Crystal's eulogy was incredible, a combination of humor and heart. It's on YouTube. The funeral procession took so long, it was like a state holiday. People 10 deep on the sidewalks, and so the scheduled start of the service was delayed by almost 2 hours, and it took place in the arena where the University of Louisville Cardinals play basketball. So the seats were filled, but on the floor of the arena were folding chairs for the invited guests and for the eulogists. And so as we all waited for it to begin, we're in little clusters of conversation. When in walks Don King. Can you all picture Don King, boxing impresario, the hair, the whole thing? He's wearing his American flag jean jacket. He's waving his little American flag. And for some reason he thinks, as he approaches the group I'm in, that he is compelled to offer some sort of caption for each person. So he says, Coach Pat Riley, straight off the pages of GQ. Sugar Ray Leonard, not a mark on him, as beautiful as a child. Katie Couric, America's sweetheart. Then he turns to me and he goes, Michael J. Fox. So, Ian, I thank you for getting it all straight. And since this is a Syracuse event, and I look around and I see all this orange, and I have orange ties. I have orange pocket silks. And the only time I have an excuse to wear them is on an occasion like this, and yet I left the house without doing it. So for that, I apologize, but this doesn't lessen the following fact. And I think that all of us who are connected to the Newhouse School feel the same way. We feel such pride in being part of that legacy. And every time a new person comes along, like this ridiculous prodigy Noah Eagle right here, who is so frighteningly good in his mid-20s, I wasn't that good. I'm telling you, I wasn't that good. Your dad wasn't even that good, even though you're his mini-me. But every time someone else comes along, Sean McDonough was up there on the screen, Mike Tirico. Mike Tirico received the first Bob Costas scholarship from the Newhouse School in 1987. And I came up to Syracuse to make sure that the first recipient wasn't a knucklehead, and he turned out to be anything but, and wound up succeeding me in most of my assignments at NBC. So this is a really proud legacy. Much of what I had intended to say was mentioned in one way or another by Ian and by the gracious people in the video. I always felt that sports broadcasting, at least my part of it, and very often I was the host more than the play-by-play person. The host of the Olympics has a different role than the guy at the swimming venue or track and field. And there are interstitial moments where you're going to interview the president of the IOC or comment about some subject or other. And for those who say stick to sports, how in the world do you cover an Olympics without politics somehow intersecting with sports? What's with the IOC's troubling affinity for authoritarian regimes, to go twice to Beijing, to go to Putin's Russia? What's with that? And today, the continued emergence of women in sports, the disturbing racial angle in some of the response to Caitlin Clark, the whole issue of trans women in sports. What about NIL? And is what's happening with that utterly irreconcilable with any even pretense that there's a relationship anymore between academics and athletics? All of those things need to be covered, not during the game, not in between pitches or in between free throws, but at some point needs to be covered. Print journalism and digital journalism, sports journalism, still doing a good job in that regard. I fear that we've dropped the ball, not completely, but largely, on the broadcast side, because apparently people who produce and make talent decisions on the debate shows think that 10 minutes of people screaming at each other about a half dozen different topics a day in a state of high dudgeon is better than a Jack Whitaker or Dick Schaap or Jim McKay essay on the subject, which, if well-crafted, would say more in 3 minutes than these shows say in 3 hours. I think they've largely, not completely, abandoned that responsibility. Much less 30 for 30 on ESPN, much less Outside the Lines. Most tragically, HBO Sports, once the gold standard, forget about Emmys, a room full of Peabody Awards for Ross Greenberg and everyone that he put to work on Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel, and my show, On the Record, and the way they covered the NFL on Inside the NFL, which was different than the way the other networks did it. Bomani Jones' show, most recently, and all the great sports documentaries they used to do, all of that is gone. The business model changed, and it's completely gone. And that's a tremendous loss for people who just enjoy a quality presentation. You know, sports isn't brain surgery, but it doesn't have to be brain dead either. People who enjoy a quality presentation and those who want to see the very valid issues in sports examined. Another problem here, if that's the right way to put it, is that the networks that cover sports, that bring you the games, which generally are done very, very well, the quality of the broadcasting, the quality of the production, the features, all the rest. But network TV sports is the only business I can think of where the buyer must continually flatter the seller. Here's your $1 billion or more, and if we pull a Brinks armored truck up to Park Avenue and we haven't delivered it in the proper denominations, we apologize profusely and we'll be right back. But within all of that, with all the hundreds and hundreds of hours of coverage, let's say, of the NFL, can't there be a Meet the Press style interview of Roger Goodell somewhere? You got a 6-hour Super Bowl pregame show? Can't that be there somewhere? Franchise relocations? That's a political issue, yes, but it intersects with the NFL. CTE, I talked about it. League didn't like it. I was in an emeritus role. I was less important by that time to NBC by mutual choice, and they didn't want me doing that either. But I sleep better at night because I did. I don't think that it was necessarily anyone else's role. People see their roles differently. And most of the people who are the best play-by-play announcers, including people in this room, are magnificent at what they do. But I saw my role, at least at times, as a different one. And I felt that if only 5% maybe was journalistic, if only a tiny portion of it was a well-crafted essay, then that was a nod toward the people that I valued and who influenced me growing up. Not just broadcasters, but writers. I always valued a well-turned phrase. I always valued a well-expressed thought, a grace note, a bit of elegance in the way people express themselves, but also the willingness to identify and talk about the elephants in the room. Beyond sports, and I'll make this concise, the free press is under attack. Democracy, as we have known it, is under attack. And these are not, what's happening now, are not matters of small degree. They're different in kind to anything, certainly in my lifetime, and maybe in the history of the American presidency. And since networks, in many cases, are owned, they all are corporations, but in some cases, those corporations have specific financial stakes in running the gauntlet that the Trump administration will throw up against them, not just in the form of Trump's unhinged Truth Social rants and the things he says that are an affront to basic decency. Forget about basic American principles, it's an affront to both, but nonetheless, his FCC intimidated ABC into refuting George Stephanopoulos. All they should have said was, George misspoke. The president, that paragon of virtue, was only found guilty of sexual assault, not rape. So we stand corrected. They didn't have to pay a $15 million ransom. And did Sherry Redstone, because she wants to effect a merger that Trump's FCC could stand in the way of, did she have to besmirch and undercut the gold standard in our lifetime of broadcast journalism, 60 Minutes? Paying $20 million in ransom to Trump is just the cost of doing business when there's billions of dollars at stake. These are ongoing assaults on the basic idea of a free press. Thomas Jefferson once said, if I should be able, I'm paraphrasing here, if I should be able to retain only one of the amendments to the Constitution, it's the first one, the right to a free press, because that's the safeguard of democracy. And which does not mean that we are without fault. It does not mean that the legacy or mainstream media doesn't screw up from time to time or have blind spots or misplaced narratives. But if the answer to that is MAGA media, if the answer to that is Donald Trump's view of the world, which is only through a prism of what benefits him, there are no higher ideals, there are no principles at work other than what benefits him, I'll stay with where we are without correction if the correction is what Donald Trump represents. And what also has happened here is that because he is the president, to a certain extent, who he is and what he does and what is done in his name has been normalized, so that responsible journalists have to pretend that there's always two sides to this. There really isn't two sides to much of what Donald Trump represents. If someone says, and the idea that you have to find somebody who will not just defend Donald Trump, but valorize him, even on CNN or wherever else, just in the name of being balanced. Look, if someone is contending that the earth is flat, in order to appear objective, you are not required to say, well, maybe it might be oblong. No, it's not. Certain things are just true. And regrettably, something that's true in America right now is that the President of the United States has absolutely no regard, and in fact has contempt for basic American principles and basic common decency. And I've heard this on occasion, I used to love Bob Costas, but then when he turned political, and of course, when I did, then every good thing I did for 40 years was washed away. Now I suck. You know what? If that's what you think, and that's how you think, and you think it in defense of that guy, I wear that as a badge of honor. Just as I wear this and my ongoing connection to Syracuse University and the Newhouse School as a badge of honor. Thank you all very much.
Well, congratulations again to Bob Costas, ICT, and to all of the Mirror Award finalists and winners. Not at all. And a special thanks to our amazing Master of Ceremonies, Mary Calvi, tonight. Thank you to everyone, and congratulations to our winners. And thanks again to all of our sponsors this evening. A special shout out to Warner Brothers Discovery for providing delicious treats that everyone in the audience will be able to take home as you leave, so be sure to grab. And your presence helps us recognize the kind of writing and reporting that shows why journalism matters. Work that holds accountable those in power, but that also holds accountable for our own industry too, all for the benefit of the public good. Your presence here tonight also helps our Newhouse School support our core mission established more than 60 years ago by the Newhouse family to provide the best journalism education in the country. Net proceeds from the Mirror Awards fund Newhouse scholarships, which provide students access to a quality education and the opportunity to study at Syracuse University centers here in New York, in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., or abroad. Our faculty and staff are among the best in their fields, and I want to thank those who took time to travel from campus for joining us tonight. Together, we are committed to ensuring the success of the Newhouse School for another 60 years and beyond, training the most talented and driven communication students in the country. And finally, I want to thank the student volunteers who joined us tonight. Students, please stand briefly if you are able so that you can be recognized. And for our guests, if you haven't had a chance to speak with our students just yet, please do take a couple of moments to do so before you leave. Learn more about their career goals and aspirations and what makes Newhouse special for them. These dynamic individuals continue to race to rack up awards, create shows, cover sports, host podcasts, publish magazines, and do about everything else on campus in media and communications you can think of. They represent the future of our industry, so thank you for your support of the Mirror Awards. We hope to see you all again here next year. Good night, everyone.